Units, units, units. In this presentation, we're going to answer these three questions. What are units? When do we use them? And which units go with which measurements? You've already seen a presentation on measurements of length, mass, and volume. Now we're going to learn a little more about those units that we discussed. So what are units? Units are adjectives for numbers. They describe what that number means or represents. So for example, if you say you have 13, that could be 13 anything until you put a unit with it. It could be 13 jelly beans, $13, 13 boogers. It doesn't matter, as the number doesn't matter as much until you put the unit with it. And a base unit is one of anything. So when do we use units? We use units all the time. Anytime we need to be clear about what our number is describing, we need to use a unit. And that's especially for the work that you turn in for science, that is all the time. So which units do you use? In science, we use units that go with the metric system. So if you are measuring length, you're going to use some form of the base unit meters. If you're measuring mass, you're going to use some form of the base unit grams. And if you're measuring volume, you will use some form of the base unit liters. It's important to remember, all of these base units represent one item. But if you add a prefix, you can increase or decrease the amount you're talking about. The prefixes are kilo, which represents 1,000, hecto, which means 100, deca, which means 10. Our base units, remember, are meters, liters, and grams. They represent 1. Deci, now we get into the prefixes that mean smaller than 1. Deci means 1/10, centi means 1/100th, and milli means 1,000th. It's important that you remember the order of the prefixes, and this silly sentence can help. King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk. If we think about this, the K in king stands for kilo, hecto, deca, base, deci, centi, and milli. So here are some examples. If you're talking about measuring the length of something, which can also include the height, the width, or the distance, you might use units such as meter, kilometer, centimeter, or millimeter. If you're talking about measuring the volume of something, which remember, volume can be measured either with a ruler or using a graduated cylinder if you're measuring liquid or if you're measuring something with irregular sides, your units would be liter, deciliter, or milliliter. And finally, if you're measuring mass, your units could be gram, milligram, kilogram, or hectogram.